Good afternoon and welcome to Three and Out here all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop here with you on this Tuesday. A lot to get to here on the show. We will chat with Roddy Jones of the ACC Network. We'll talk some college football with him. We will talk with Jay Cruz, UGAsports.com. We'll talk some Georgia recruiting with him here on the show as well. We will hear from Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show. We will talk some golf, and certainly now the latest with Tiger Woods. If you've been in and around, the breaking news with Tiger Woods, we'll get to that coming up in just a second and get you the very latest with what we know with Tiger Woods this afternoon here on Three and Out. So BJ and Ben will plenty to get to there, but also today here in coastal Georgia, the 1 year anniversary of the death, Ben, of Ahmaud Arbery.
Yeah, Kevin and BJ. I mean, it's obviously rough one for Ahmaud's family, but a year to the day, obviously, tragic events that happened in the city of Brunswick. I mean, I'm not going to go over everything that happened. I will say that I send my condolences, I send my love, I send my strength and support to Ahmaud Arbery's family. I send my love, support, and condolences to a community that has really come together because of it, in spite of it. And I'm not here to litigate anything. I'm not here to condemn and all these different things, BJ and Kevin. I just will say that, the heart and soul of a city was tried a year ago because of one of his city's greatest, people, one of the city's, finest. Ahmaud Arbery, learned a lot about him through that tragedy, learned a lot about him as an individual, talked to a lot of people that knew him, that love him, supported him. So to the family of Ahmaud Arbery, I send my best. And BJ, I think me and you later on are gonna participate in the 2.3 mile. We're gonna do that later. But all that to the side, I mean, sometimes we tested as people. Sometimes we tested as individuals, and growth is not something that comes easy. We had to grow because of this, and I say we, not just the city of Brunswick, not just the city of Georgia, not just Ahmaud Arbery's family, but we had to look ourselves in the mirror as people and say to ourselves, are we better than this? And I believe we are. And I hope that we continue to come together, not, because of a tragedy like this. Ahmaud Arbery will be missed. I will not say I know what his family is dealing with a year later, but my empathy definitely goes out to them. My strength and support goes out to them because it's hard to lose a loved one. Definitely it's hard to live through it through their eyes and through the world's view because it was a big thing. But BJ, like I said, later on, you and I are going to definitely participate. I think, Kevin, you told something about a virtual run that people in all 50 states are involved in. But to the family of Ahmaud Arbery, I send my condolences. And BJ and Kevin, like I say, I mean, it's crazy that it's been a year, but I think this is still a community that's still trying to come to grips with what happened.
Well, and I think the community, the country, and the world responded to this sick, unspeakable act. And you think about Ahmaud a year later, and you continue to pray for the family. You continue to pray for the community. You continue to reflect. And I know there are a number of different things, Kevin, we'll get the details in a second, going on this evening, but take some time to just think about Ahmaud, think about those horrific circumstances, think about kind of who we are as people, think about where we need to go, and just think about the family, think about his friends. It's hard to think that it's been a year since it happened, and it's unfathomable. And Ben, I echo your sentiments of prayer and support. And if you can take part in some of the events that are going on, I think that's great. The 2.23 mile walk or run is something that I think when you see thousands of people doing it around the country, it's powerful, it's meaningful. So today is a very difficult day. And again, all of our thoughts and prayers and just energy, support goes to the family, the friends, the community, and we'll continue to do that forever.
And as BJ and Ben mentioned, there are some events to take part in. Today, 5:30, it's going to be a memorial walk through Satilla Shores and a candlelight visual right there where that unfortunate crime happened. And they will be doing that today at 5:30. Also, as you heard Ben and BJ mentioned, the virtual run that is going on. You can register for that, and it is anytime between now and March the 3rd. So this is a virtual event. You can check out the 223 Foundation for all the details there, but it is a virtual event that can be done between now and March the 3rd. And as you heard BJ and Ben say, they have folks from all 50 states. Over 4,600 people have registered to run virtually in that event. So certainly if you can do that, you can participate and do that as well to help remember and support the 223 Foundation there as well. So as I said, I echo what you guys said earlier. I think that's what needs to be said on this day as we remember and continue, as Ben said, to be better and know that we are better in a lot of ways, but continue to be better as a whole in our communities as well. So be mindful of that, be in thought and prayer about that as we remember Ahmaud here today. Moving forward here on the show as we go to the sports world, another breaking news situation, Ben and BJ, Tiger Woods. And this was happening right about 2:00 or so, 2:15 or so. A lot of talk about, Tiger Woods was involved in an accident, but no real confirmation on that. And then about 25 minutes ago, you get the LA, Los Angeles County Police Department saying, yep, Tiger Woods was involved in a single car crash that required the jaws of life to get him out of the car. If you don't know what the jaws of life are, it's a big pair of scissors basically to cut the car open to get him out. His agent said he suffered multiple leg injuries and is currently in surgery. So Tiger Woods, obviously, a lot of folks praying for him this afternoon, as well as alive, apparently, and in surgery. But obviously, a very, very serious car accident. If you saw, I think news stations have got pictures of it floating around the car. Obviously, it was a pretty major accident. You could tell just by the pictures of it. And certainly, we'll wait to hear what happens further with Tiger Woods once he gets out of surgery. But certainly, sending thoughts and prayers his way.
Yeah, very scary stuff. And you certainly hope for the best, pray for the best. When you think about Tiger, what he's going through right now, and it's startling how kind of fast this news hit. We were doing our show meeting and talking about some of the topics for today, and then you started to see kind of mainstream media outlets reference what happened to Tiger, and then you're getting more and more information, and it's just terrifying stuff. And when you think about an athlete, you always think about if something tragic does happen, how does it affect their athletic career? But I think that's secondary right now. You just want him to be healthy. You're certainly praying for all the medical folks and people that are working on him right now. But you just want him to be healthy and get through this with as little damage as possible. And again, I don't want to speculate. We're very early still in getting all the news reports. As Kevin said, I think what we know is significant car accident, was a considerable effort to remove him from the wreckage, and now he's in surgery, and you're looking at damage to the legs. And beyond that, I don't know / feel comfortable / have any idea, what the reality is. But scary stuff. You wish him the best, Ben, and I guess we're all just kind of waiting and seeing what the result's going to be here with Tiger Woods.
Absolutely. I mean, Tiger Woods is obviously trending on social media, and when it comes to sports icons, definitely in the city of LA. I mean, you was like, what in the world? And obviously you went and saw that he was in a wreck, and as you mentioned, BJ, I mean, you just hope he's okay. You happy that he is okay. Obviously, he's in surgery right now. And if you the city of LA, I mean, you talk about the type of things they've had to deal with within a year's time. I mean, year removed from Kobe, Kobe, and now you're talking about Tiger Woods. This is the same day. So I just give those LAPD guys, those firefighters and police officers and a lot of credit, because let's face it, this is what they do. But then when they getting up on the scene, they hear, wait, they like, man, it's Tiger Woods. Obviously, it's like, so I give those guys a lot of credit. That's why they are, the greatest among us. But yes, we are hoping for the best when it comes to Tiger Woods. Obviously, because of who he is, it's going to garner more attention. But yeah, Kevin, when you said it, and we was doing going over the show, and you said, "Man, something going on with Tiger Woods." First thing I do is go to social media. I just typed in his name, and next thing you know, it's boop. It's just like we're going for the Adam Schefter. He on there talking about. So okay, but I am happy that he's okay. Obviously, we're waiting on the details to come out. This is when you wait, people. This is when you let the pros do what they do. Do not speculate. I called my mom and said, "Mama, do you hear what happened to Tiger Woods?" And she said, "Oh, don't tell me." So it's just like I say, okay. So I don't want to be, we got to spread that positive like we spread that, that other stuff.
Yep.
So let me just wait for everybody else to get the final, and hopefully, Tiger Woods comes out okay.
And he's again, according to his agent, in surgery for multiple leg injuries sustained in that crash. We'll certainly get more as we go throughout the show, as we find out the extent of those, maybe, and how he performed there in surgery. We'll come back. We'll switch gears. We'll talk a little college football when we return. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you're with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network and ESPNCoastal.com, where you can catch a live audio stream there. We're also live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. So you can see us there. Get an archive version of the show, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. So glad you were with us. We'll hear from Roddy Jones, ACC Network, coming up in just a little bit. But we look at now heading into the spring, BJ and Ben, a lot of winners out there in the transfer portal game. And so much that I saw this the other day where there are still tons of guys sitting in the transfer portal and nowhere to go. So you had way more guys in the transfer portal than there were spots, but certain teams came out on top. Florida, Oklahoma, Miami, Florida State. Who do you think was the big winner in the transfer portal game here in 2021?
Yeah, it's interesting to evaluate the transfer portal results because different teams have different needs. I think both Florida and Florida State did really well. Florida didn't necessarily need kind of the 7-8 person transfer class that Florida State did. They needed to fine tune a few things, right? And they were able to do that. You need to get a boost in the ground game. You get a 5-star from Clemson and DeMarcus Bowman. You need to find a way to replace Kyle Pitts. How do you do that? Maybe only one or two players in the whole country have the athletic kind of profile that Kyle Pitts did. You get Eric Gilbert from LSU. You get some defensive line depth. So I really like what Dan Mullen did. And I know there have been, Ben, I've seen you talk about it on Twitter, kind of some relative criticisms of Dan Mullen and kind of how he recruits, maybe in comparison to Kirby Smart. Understand this is a part of recruiting. When you look at the talent that a coach brings in or a staff brings in, it's not just the high school talent. It is the transfer talent as well. And I think that's an important distinction to make when you think about Florida State. Florida State only brought in 16 or 17 high school kids, and the reason is because they desperately needed some experience. They had a lot of roster attrition. Of course, with coaching changes, you have transfers, and you had a number of guys enter the NFL draft early. Florida State needed some guys that had played some football. They needed some juniors. They needed some seniors, and I thought Mike Norvell did a really good job. Most notably, Mackenzie Milton comes in, was one of the best players in the country not long ago. We'll see how healthy he is. But beyond Mackenzie Milton, you got some help on defense. Jermaine Johnson, Dog fans, you know that name. He's a pass rusher. You get Jamie Robinson, who was an all-SEC caliber safety for South Carolina. So I think there are different ways to go about it. You look at Miami, who had success again. Their team last year, 3 or 4 of their best players were transfers. So you can be very successful either kind of identifying a couple of needs like Dan Mullen did and addressing them in the best possible way, or even trying to replicate some experience on your own roster like Mike Norvell's doing. I would agree with the teams that we mentioned as being winners. Oklahoma as well, getting Wanya Morris. That's a huge get along the offensive line for the Sooners. But I think that, yeah, the Florida schools probably lead the way when you think about who had success in the portal.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Florida State did the best because, BJ, at the end of the day, you want to be able to have stability at the quarterback position. And the thing is, when you look at a guy like Mackenzie Milton, people's asking, is he going to come back to UCF? You see, obviously, a Heifel has moved on, to Tennessee. How is his health going to be? It's going to come down to that offensive line. And the thing about it is college is built, real similar to the pros. When you got a very, very young team, it's going to be hard to win at key positions. So I just think that when you look at what Florida State was able to get Mackenzie Milton, Brandon Moore, Jarquez, McClendon, you talk about Jamie Robinson, BJ Jermaine Johnson. So you got some position needs. Safety, you got a pass rusher, you got a quarterback. You kind of like mix and match. And the thing about Florida is, I like the additions they got, but I love the fact that they got DeMarcus Bowman. They showed him yesterday catching a wheel route. You know what they didn't show him doing? Run the football. And for him to be effective, they're going to have to run the football. And everybody gets known. Everybody gets they get known for certain things. If you are Dan Mullen, you don't look at recruiting rankings. You can't stand it. Why? Because the team that you got to play every year named Georgia, they're going to be in the top 1, 2, or 3. But what he does in the transfer portal, BJ, is really, really good when you talk about being able to snatch guys out of it. But
Ben, I just want to interrupt you for a second. I as a Georgia fan watching that wheel route, I was having PTSD flashbacks.
I wasn't gonna say anything. Now I wasn't gonna say anything
Like
about
200 yards receiving for backs in that game. Yeah, that was the most horrifying video I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I mean, and Bowman would catch one yesterday. You know, a nice little over the shoulder throw from Emory Jones. But I want to see running backs, you know, run the football. But I just think that when you look at teams like, you know, it's you look at teams like Miami, you look at teams like Florida. You know, Florida State, the big three. I like the fact that they're saying, look, if we can't do it in recruiting, we'll do it in the transfer portal. And the thing about the transfer portal, you talk about guys who now they decide where they want to go as far as like, I've been in college a little bit, what's going to fit, what I do best. So, yeah, I think, and obviously Oklahoma getting 1 year Morris. I mean, I was joking about him, Kevin, I was like, can he sing? For those of you who don't know who 1 year Morris, that is the lead singer of Boyz II Men. I am telling my age. It's fine.
And so, yeah, but I do believe, like, as you see the transfer portal become more and more involved, I think coaches will, in some ways, treat that like recruiting. It used to be, BJ, you've seen this evolve, where the transfer was like, okay, a guy wants to graduate transfer. We have an opening at guard. He's a guy that can come in and maybe help us out a little bit if he wants to play one more year. Now, I mean, you look at the transfer portal. I mean, Florida State, 6 very good players. I mean, that is a recruiting class where you can,
Texas State didn't sign a high school player.
Right. Yeah, Texas State did nothing but junior college and transfer portal guys. So I look at it as, especially if I'm a mid-major, I can hit the transfer portal and get a more experienced team quicker than doing regular recruiting, right? I mean, I can go recruit high school guys that I got to develop, or I can go get a guy that's been at another school for 2 years, unhappy, and wants to come in, and you get a more experienced player in some instances, and you can supplement that with recruiting there with the transfer portal.
You better hope he's immediately eligible, though.
Well, I mean, I understand that, but it does not seem like we're floating towards that.
Floating towards doesn't mean you're there.
I understand that, but we got a free transfer this year, and I think you've seen a lot of players, a lot of teams take advantage of the fact that, hey, that guy's unhappy, come here, play right away. It's fine. I mean, and so I think if that continues to be the norm, like, hey, you're allowed a one-time, and there are talks about, hey, allowing NCAA student athletes a one-time penalty-free transfer in the future. I think you could see that become a major part of recruiting, where a team that doesn't recruit in the top 25 can say, I don't need to recruit in the top 25, but I can recruit guys who were in the top 25 and get them into my program and build with those guys.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting the number of different ways you can go at building a roster now. And we've talked with a number of coaches about kind of the nature of where we are, where technically no eligibility expired last year. So you could have a roster where you have a number of guys who are in their 5th year potentially. You've had the transfer portal become a much more common reality. So you could have a roster where you're having to replace a third of your production, a third of your personnel. There are wide varieties in where programs are. But I will say this, I thought you made a good point, Kevin, that, and this shouldn't have been the case, but it's just kind of the way the narrative went. Not long ago, I think you looked at a transfer player and you were like, yeah, maybe it didn't work out at School X, so maybe he's not the caliber of player that you're going to get via the recruiting ranks. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, the last 3 Heisman-winning quarterbacks were all transfers. Joe Burrow started out at Ohio State, Kyler Murray started out at Texas A&M, and Baker Mayfield started out at Texas Tech. So you're not just getting transfers that are, being rotational guys or even stepping into starting roles, but aren't necessarily superstars. The best players in college football are transferring. I mean, and there are countless examples, but I do think this will be a litmus test, guys, for kind of the macro usage of the portal. What happens at Florida State this year? Because you're going to see when a 5-star like Gilbert or Bowman enters the portal, they're going to have their suitors. I think in total, Kevin, Mike Norvell brought in 8 transfers, and I think 6 or 7 of them, like you mentioned, are projected to come in and start right away. And if that can kind of accelerate Florida State's rebuilding process, don't be surprised if you see more programs fragment their high school scholarships with their transfer scholarships moving forward.
I mean, like I said, when you look at what goes on in the NFL and goes on in college, we just call it different things. I mean, the draft, it's called recruiting in college. The free agency is called a transfer portal. It is the exact same. Ain't no money being exchanged unless you go to Tennessee, you get McDonald's bags. But I'm just saying, when you look at the fact, Kevin and BJ, think about that. So not only do I got to worry about the guy that's in high school. Now I got to worry about the guy that's in college already because they want to build around college-ready players. That's why the transfer portal is very, very, it's troublesome, for guys that trying to come into college because they always keeping an eye on you. When you start saying, man, they got five-star quarterbacks, they had 5. They're gonna have 3, at the end of this year. So. And like you said, BJ, the fact that the last 3 Heisman winning quarterbacks were all transfers, you don't think other coaches looking at that? You don't think if people say just go out there and get Nick Saban, you don't think somebody said I can go out there and get me a Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield or Joe Burrow? It sounds unrealistic to us, but to them, that's what they're looking for. So yeah, the fact that the transfer portal is taking essentially scholarships away from guys in high school is becoming more the norm, and that's why they won't. That's probably a big reason why they won't grant. I can leave the school X and go to school Y and I can play, because if I make them wait a year to play, that might be a reason why they decide not to go to certain schools.
And again, we'll see how that transfer portal continues to evolve in the coming years. We'll come back. We'll chat with Roddy Jones, ACC Network, talk a little college football with him. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us here on this Tuesday. College football. Hey, it's still going here in the spring. And joining us, our next guest, you see him on ACC Network, but he's got some college football duties going through here in the spring. Roddy Jones joins us here on 3 and Out. Roddy, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Yeah, and it's a little weird, but it's fun to have football to talk about in the spring, other than spring football, because that's usually what gets us from point A to point B.
And so we mentioned that you're going to be doing some Kennesaw State games there at the FCS level, who, again, they're playing here in the spring. How do you think this comes off? I mean, I know it's a little different, as you said, but how do you think college football here, February, March, April, into May kind of plays?
I think that's going to be the biggest question. And look, I want to address the elephant in the room first. There's no shot that this happens again in a normal year, but I do think that there are opportunities for these schools to be seen that they normally wouldn't have. I mean, normally, a Kennesaw State, for example, would have to compete in the state of Georgia with Georgia Tech, with Georgia State, with the University of Georgia, obviously. For attention, and now they really don't. I mean, Tech and State and the University of Georgia are all going to have their spring practices, but if you want to see real live tackle football, that means something. I think the Kennesaw State will really benefit from that, and all FCS schools will really benefit from that. And BJ, I really feel like it's going to come into play during the playoffs, because the FCS playoffs are some of the most exciting sporting events on the calendar. And I think people will really fall in love. They usually get lost because it's at the end of the regular season for FBS football. It's during bowl season, and then the championship happens in early January. But people are going to really get to see how good the football is, see some guys and teams that they're not usually accustomed to seeing.
Well, let me ask you about the Owls, Roddy. I mean, 2019, 11-3. You're talking about a team that obviously beat Wofford in the FCS playoffs, very close to beating Weber State in the second round. What are expectations for Kennesaw State this spring?
I think they're pretty high. I mean, with the amount that they have returning on both sides of the football, I think it is realistic to think that this will be a playoff team and hope to make a deep run. I mean, this is a team that's kind of reached a point where it's looking to break through. They've made it to the second round of the FCS playoffs twice in Brian Bohannon's tenure, which is the existence of this program. But they haven't quite been able to get over the hump. So getting to the quarterfinals, I think, is going to be a big goal. Something that they did back in 2017. But getting to the semis, I think that would be sort of the validation that they're looking for here. It's an abbreviated schedule. It's sort of a sprint rather than the long slog that we're accustomed to. But with the amount they have coming back on both sides of the football, especially on the offense, when you've got a quarterback returning and all five offensive line starters, you've got to feel pretty good about what you're going to do with Brian Bohannon's triple option system. A ton of experience coming back on defense as well. And a schedule that, like I said, not only is a sprint, but the conference that they're in is a little shorthanded this season. So when you look at the Big South, not all the teams have decided to play. Monmouth is obviously the biggest hurdle for them to cross over, but they don't play Monmouth until the end of the year. So this is going to be a year that I think Brian Bohannon has really high expectations for the Owls.
And Roddy, even stick with that. I mean, obviously, people that haven't had a chance to see Big South football, you talk about big-time teams throughout, but the thing about Kennesaw State, they kind of one of the bullies in the Big South. I mean, they beat up on teams pretty bad, man. I mean, I understand they've had a lot of success under Coach Brian Bohannon, but I just think that when you look at this season getting over that hump, how much it had to do with not the fact that they don't got the talent, is the fact that teams going to the offseason every year saying, we got to beat that team from Kennesaw.
I think that's going to play into it. But like you said, Kennesaw State's kind of been the bully on the block. Monmouth's been the only school to stand up to them. But Monmouth's losing their starting quarterback from 2019. Obviously, we're talking about, a year and a half ago. But he was a Walter Payton Award finalist. So they have a lot to replace. But Monmouth has built a pretty solid program up there. They have been the only one to consistently stand up to Kennesaw State. So that's the game that the Owls are going to have circled. And then going forward, the way this program is going to be measured, because of the lack of powers in their league, it's not the best from top to bottom FCS league. and Kennesaw State sees itself as one of the best teams in the country, the way they're going to measure themselves is not against the other teams in the Big South. It's going to be against teams like South Dakota State. It's going to be against teams like Northern Iowa and North Dakota State and some of these really good powers in FCS. That's where Kennesaw State is going to measure itself, and that's when Kennesaw State will feel like, all right, now we've gotten a quality win that this program can build on.
Roddy Jones joining us here on 3 and Out ACC Network. You mentioned the ACC programs going through spring practice. Jeff Collins coming up on year 3, got a lot of young talent. Doesn't have a lot of wins in the regular season. What do you need to see from that squad here in the spring?
I think look, it's kind of become a broken record almost with Georgia Tech. You need to see development. I think you really want to look at development on the offensive line and from the quarterback position with Jeff Sims. I'll focus on Sims because he was pretty boom or bust in his freshman season. I mean, had great games, but then also had games where he turned the ball over a ton. He had 13 interceptions, 5 or 6 fumbles. So you just can't do that as a quarterback, turn the ball over almost 20 times in a season. So I think now certainly you're not going to see that in the spring. He's not going to get hit. The interceptions. So he'll start to feel out the defense, and so the interceptions typically aren't a big issue. But you want to see improvement in the accuracy for sure. And in the spring, I think they're going to try and not. I think they always keep the quarterbacks in the pocket. So the deliveries in the pocket where he was pretty good, just has to continue to improve. The other positions that I want to see improvement, defensive line, you've got to be able to create some pressure from the defensive line, and Jeff Collins Sr., they haven't been able to do that. I would like to see the secondary play or continue to improve its play. That was thought to be a strength coming into last year. It wasn't to start the season, and then they got better over the course of the year. And then at the wide receiver position, you've got to have a difference maker at wide receiver. Amarian Brown's transferring out. You've got some experience, but all of those guys are just kind of guys. You need someone to step up and really be the alpha male. So those are the areas I think they need to improve. They've got a really tough schedule. The ACC is going to be really good next year. So it's going to be a tough road, but I think the constant improvement is still what you're looking to see.
Florida State was obviously very active in the transfer portal, bringing in Mackenzie Milton, among others. Can bringing in those veteran players accelerate the rebuilding process in Tallahassee?
Oh, man. Can it accelerate the rebuilding process? Sure, it can some. They are deficient in some major areas. And now, will the transfers help? Absolutely. Like, I think especially in the secondary, you're going to see those transfers step in and improve a lot. Mackenzie Milton will make their offense look a lot more like what Mike Norvell wants to be. And they've got some talent at running back. They're just they went from being like really, really bad on the offensive line to just really bad on the offensive line. And now I think they're just going to be bad on the offensive line, and maybe then they will continue to get to average. But that takes years, and it takes people coming in and development and knowing the system. The same thing that Georgia Tech's going through. I just don't see a big jump from Florida State coming next year, or really the year after. Maybe the year after. I don't know. I don't want to look too far down the line. But you're losing some talented players. The biggest thing for me, the biggest disappointment from Florida State was the way that defense played last year. I thought that defensive line had a shot to be one of the top 3 or 4 in the conference, which would have made it one of the top 10 in the country because the conference had some really good defensive lines. The defensive line was bad last year, and there's no reason it should have been with Janarius Robinson and Josh Campbell and Marvin Wilson for part of the season, Corey Durden and Robert Cooper. Like, those are guys. All 5 of them will likely get shots to play in the NFL, and this defensive line was terrible. So I think it can accelerate it some. They've got some scholarship issues. They're going to be way below the numbers, so depth will be a concern. And the offensive line is certainly going to be a concern as well.
I mean, Roddy, you mentioned Sims at Georgia Tech. You got Cunningham at Louisville. Sam Howell, De'Ara King, DJU. I'm not even going to try to butcher his name from Clemson. How good is the quarterback play going to be in the ACC? And is there a conference with better quarterbacks top to bottom than the ACC next year?
I think the quarterback play in the ACC is going to be fantastic. DJ Uiagalelei at Clemson steps in for Trevor Lawrence. And while he's not going to be Trevor, he's still going to be really good. One guy that people aren't really talking about a whole lot is Kenny Pickett from Pitt. Kenny Pickett was a guy who, had he decided to leave and not take advantage of the free year, he would have been invited to the Senior Bowl, would have likely performed really well. Teams would have been impressed by his athleticism and his arm strength. The numbers are okay, but they got better last year. I thought he played better, especially before his ankle injury. So I think it's going to be really, really good. Devin Leary at NC State has a chance to be really good. You've got Braxton Burmeister, a dual threat quarterback at Virginia Tech. So I think from top to bottom, the quarterback play in the ACC is going to be really, really strong. And that may be the separator between the ACC and some of these other conferences is for multiple years now, back-to-back years, you've had really good quarterback play. And I think that's going to continue. Phil Jurkovec at Boston College had an incredible first year before he hurt his shoulder. And then even after his shoulder, he gritted it out and was pretty good down the stretch. So you've got some really talented quarterbacks in this league. You mentioned Derek King and obviously Sam Howell at North Carolina. But don't forget about Sam Hartman at Wake Forest, a guy who did a lot with a really inexperienced crew last year and didn't throw an interception until like their fifth break. And Wake Forest had so many pauses last year that it kind of made it difficult to judge them in the second half of the year. But there's some really good quarterbacks in this league. And I think it's something that will make the league really good and much more consistent than it's been in the past.
Rod, before we let you get out of here, I had to ask, and I need an answer not from Roddy Jones, the ACC analyst, but from Roddy Jones, the former Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket. Mike Griffith from Dog Nation put out a pretty spicy take where he said Georgia should drop Georgia Tech from its annual rivalry and add Clemson as its annual rivalry. As a former Jacket who has beaten Georgia in Athens, just curious what your take is on that.
It's cute. I mean, sure. Like, yeah, let's throw that out there. I think it just shows a complete and utter disrespect for what the rivalry is. Like, you can be cute and say, hey, Georgia is more competitive with Clemson. It shouldn't play Tech anymore. But, like, do you have any respect for college football? I know Georgia and Clemson used to play forever, but if you have respect for the game and if you really want to cherish what college football is, you don't even joke about getting rid of those rivalries. The fact that they didn't play last year is a travesty. Like, it's completely ridiculous. The fact that Clemson and South Carolina didn't play last year is completely ridiculous. It could have been done. It should have been done because instead of playing South Carolina or instead of playing Georgia, you play UCF, and I can't even remember who Clemson played in the non-conference. But like, I don't pay any attention to it because it's just somebody trying to get attention. I don't know who Mike is. I don't know Mike. But to joke about getting rid of the rivalry game, the rivalry in your state, I think it's just a complete disservice. Like, you don't do that just because a team is going through a downslope. Because what if the tables are turned? Like, Georgia's riding high now, but what if Georgia Tech starts riding high and Georgia's going through a tough time? Like, you want Georgia Tech fans joking, hey, we should get rid of Georgia and start playing Alabama. Like, get out of here, man. Sorry.
Let's go.
You caught me off guard with it. It's just completely disrespectful to what college football is and to what the rivalry is.
No, that was
flows to it. I get it. So it's ridiculous.
That was an amazing answer. Thank you, Roddy. I completely agree.
Roddy Jones, our guest here on 3 and Out. Roddy, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, guys. Take care.
We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. We'll hear from Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, coming up in hour number 2. Also, Jay Cruz, UGAsports.com, will join us next hour. We'll talk Georgia recruiting. Rivals just dropping their 5-star rankings. Where's Georgia stand in the early going with some of those 5 stars? He'll join us coming up next hour. But again, appreciate Roddy Jones joining us. Christian got him a little fired up with that last question, BJ. Trying to throw Mike Griffith's take out there about Georgia playing Clemson.
Oh yeah, look, I'm excited for Georgia Clemson. I think Georgia and Clemson should play more often, but Georgia Tech, that's one of the top rivalries in college football, and I do think it is a rivalry that has a history and tradition that makes the game special, that makes the game better. And Roddy had about 225 in Athens with one of those Georgia Tech wins between the hedges. But yeah, Georgia Tech is good for college football. Georgia's riding high right now. Georgia Tech's retooling a little bit. It's not going to be like that forever. But yeah, that was look good.
I don't know if he's going to say it. I just don't think Kevin inherently agrees with everything we're saying. I don't think he thinks that the road back for Georgia Tech is quite as clear as you and Roddy.
Well, but Christian, this is what I'm getting at, and I mean, I don't know what Kevin's thoughts are, but this is what I'm saying. No rivalry on earth is 50-50. Okay. Ben knows, for folks who know that obviously Ben is a Gator legend and I grew up rooting for Florida State. I used to always get on Ben all the time. Steve Spurrier never won in Tallahassee, ever. Didn't win one time in Tallahassee. Michigan has lost to Ohio State 8 years in a row. Georgia, Florida, Ben, when you were at Florida, y'all had beaten Georgia, 15 out of 18 times or something like that? I mean, no rivalry is split 50-50.
What I like the most about it is, as great as Roddy Jones is, you get to talk about Georgia Tech. You see what it does to him? It just gets him out of his element because of his mind. It has nothing to do with who's got the most momentum right now or who's recruiting better right now. You do not get to change the rules up now. Like he said, what's going to happen if it switches and Georgia Tech starts balling? Oh, we should take that. No. Those type of takes are ridiculous for the simple fact that it's bigger than just who wins the game and loses the game or who's got the most momentum right now. Certain things are a part of the college football fabric, and Georgia Tech is one of those games. You don't got to like it, and if you're a Georgia Tech fan, it just makes you hate Georgia more. And if you're a Georgia fan, you think Georgia Tech ain't on y'all level. That's the problem, because both of those takes are naive. I think they're on the same level, just one team just happen to be playing a little bit better right now.
Well, what were your thoughts on it, Kevin?
On
theoretically, because we were talking about it. You said it wouldn't hurt your feelings if
I'm saying
either one of them dropped it.
I just look at the end of the game, and again, you could say, well, it's a rivalry game. Yeah, I would say most you would say aren't 50-50, but I mean, if you're looking at it honestly, it's probably more like 70-30, 75-25 if you're looking at it that way. So to say that they're on the same level is mathematically not true. When you look at it from not only recent history, but if you extrapolate that back out, going all the way back to the 80s and the 70s, the gap
is getting bigger fiscally.
I think right now the money, if you're in an SEC school right now, the money is way better than anything the ACC is putting out there in terms of being able to compete with even Clemson. I think Clemson's largely done it on their own. That's certainly not the norm in the ACC. So I think there's a financial gap or that's hard to overcome. And we'll come back. I ran out of time. 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. And I ran out of time. Three and out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you're with us on this Tuesday here on Three and Out. We are streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube as well. You can catch the show there as well. So plenty of options for you to get us here on the show on this Tuesday afternoon. We are efforting Rich Styles to join us here for his weekly Style Points on the show. And we'll talk some golf with him here on the show. We'll get the very latest with Tiger Woods, who is apparently in surgery injuries per a spokesman on Tiger Woods, but was involved in a single car accident. I had to use the jaws of life to get him out of his vehicle. In surgery for multiple leg injuries, but apparently, according to a spokesman, not life-threatening. So some good news there for Tiger Woods. We'll see the extent of those injuries, obviously, once the final surgeries are done and complete.
Yeah, you're very grateful that it's not as bad as it potentially could have been. But yeah, Tiger Woods involved in a very scary, terrifying car accident, and I think everybody is just hoping for the best. I saw this quote, Kevin, from Justin Thomas. This is in the ESPN story about the car crash. Justin Thomas says, quote, "I'm sick to my stomach. You know, it hurts to see one of my closest friends get in an accident. Man, I just hope he's all right. Just worry for his kids. You know, I'm sure they're struggling." And, absolutely. Those are the kind of things you think about. And you hope and pray that Tiger Woods is okay, and that, you can move forward with as much normalcy as possible, but just scary stuff, Ben. And, just goes to show you, I mean, any second, any moment, life could take a turn, and you're glad Tiger Woods is in the stable condition that he reportedly is, but you hope for as best as good of an outcome as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, like, I go back to we was going over the show, and when Tiger Woods came on, I was just happy that it wasn't life-threatening injury. So yeah, I mean, I'm wishing the best for Tiger Woods.
And we have Rich Styles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, joining us here on Three and Out. And Rich, obviously, Tiger Woods in the news today because of a horrific traffic accident, multiple leg injuries, apparently non-life-threatening, but in surgery. He's got certainly the golf world thinking about Tiger this afternoon.
Yeah, there is no doubt. I mean, this is probably. I wouldn't say life-threatening, but I think it definitely puts his chances of playing in the Masters out. I mean, his SUV overturned, had to be cut out, as you guys have already talked about. Leg injuries, and he was. I think this is not obviously going to be good for his back, which was still weeks in recovery. Obviously, right now we're praying for him to come out of this, and golf right now is secondary. And prayers are for him and his family and for him to come out of this.
Absolutely. And Rich, we saw some comments from Justin Thomas and the ESPN story. I know a number of golfers and athletes and just folks from all walks of life have expressed support on social media. How has this news kind of rocked the golf world when you think about who Tiger is and just the brand that he is?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind when I heard about the car accident and that he had to be cut out was Ben Hogan. Ben Hogan was in a fatal car crash, not a fatal car crash, but a real bad car crash during his career when he hit a Greyhound bus, and it took him a year and a half to come back, and he won the U.S. Open. So, it rocks any world based on what's happened now to Tiger Woods. Not something you would have thought about. Don't know how it happened or why it happened, but he's still in surgery, and that's a good sign, but also a bad sign if it takes too long for surgery.
And Rich, obviously, it happened in L.A. I mean, not too many, we're a year removed from what happened, the tragic death of Kobe Bryant and how it just shook the sports world. There are certain guys, when it comes to what they do for the sport, they transcend the sport. They bigger than the sport. And Tiger Woods just happened to be one of those guys. I mean, golf aside, he's one of the biggest iconic people on the planet outside of just the golf world. I mean, you never ever want to see nobody named trending. You happy that it is, non-life threatening. But sometimes as individual, we don't know how big of an impact we make, not just on the sport we play, but on the people who love us.
You got it. I mean, this is incredible. It's surprising to a lot of folks. it's tragic, and just hope that the surgery goes well, that he doesn't have too much damage on his legs. I'm pretty sure that this is not going to bode well for his back during the rehab, and we may not see Tiger Woods again this year play golf.
Rich Stiles joining us here on 3 and Out, and Rich, obviously the Genesis Open was Tiger's tournament, and he was asked if he'd be at the Masters. He said, "I hope so," but you see Max Homa with a win in the second playoff hole against Tony Finau. I mean, this is what 2 or 3 just pretty tremendous finishes on the PGA Tour that we've had. Genesis Open, just the very latest.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty dramatic couple hole playoff in the story of Max Homa, who, Tiger Woods was his idol. He loved him, and he just wanted to have an opportunity to meet him, to talk to him, and here he is giving him a trophy on Sunday. That was a big deal for Homa, and I'll tell you, nobody gave him credit for that shot from behind the tree to even get it close. They were kind of calling Finau the winner, and Homa made a heck of a shot and got it up there, missed the birdie putt. They both made par, and then he made par on the par 3, and Tony missed his putt. So a great win for him, a historical win for him, because Tiger Woods, his idol, was giving him the trophy at the end of the tournament. That was pretty cool for him. He was very emotional about that.
Well, and you guys mentioned that you've had some really successful in terms of dramatic finishes tournaments in recent weeks. Tiger Woods kind of having his spotlight, but now with the news from today, Rich, with the tournaments that are on the horizon, how does golf move forward? And I guess what will the narratives be? As yes, you have good golf and competitive golf, but you're dealing with something that is hard to describe with Tiger Woods, his wreck and his injuries.
Well, I'm sure if you would have asked Tiger, what do you want to do? I mean, it's going to be play on, and, golf will go on. There'll be news about this. It'll probably be, news for the next couple of weeks until we really find out the true story and what happened during surgery and what they think is going to happen as far as after surgery and the rehab. But, golf will go on. It is tragic. And that's one thing about, these kind of situations. Sometimes you just want the world to stop and just, listen and, observe and see how, life is so, I'm not even sure what the word is, but fleeting at the time, and it's just one of those things that, life is going to go on. Traffic is going to happen. The sun is going to shine. And we just hope the surgeons are going to get in there and just help him out as much as they can.
And obviously, Rich, I mean, he's not, unless a miracle happens, he's definitely probably not going to play in the Masters. But how much now was just having him there? He's not going to play, but just having Tiger Woods in Augusta when the Masters occurs, how big would that be for golf and for just the golf world in general?
I think it'd be huge. I mean, just having him be at the Masters, whether he's a participant, but more importantly, just knowing that he's okay and he's back on track to kind of get better and hopefully get back to being able to play golf. But the most important thing at this point is to have Tiger back healthy, as healthy as he can be at this point after the accident, and to be with his family.
And again, Rich Stiles joining us here on 3 and Out. And Rich, finally, as you said, golf going to move forward. You've got 2 tournaments this weekend as we get into the end of February. What can you tell us about what the World Golf Championship, Workday Championship down in Florida this week, and what kind of tournament that is as we get ready to turn the calendar to March next week?
Well, the WGC is a big tournament for those guys that qualified, and Tiger had actually qualified for that tournament. He wasn't going to play, but he did qualify for it. So that's a pretty big tournament down there. And then the Puerto Rican Open, which Sea Island resident Josh Teeter placed second last year. Victor Hovland is the one that won it down in Puerto Rico. That's going on. But that's a tournament that will have a lot of exemptions. So some of our local guys will be down there trying to play and try and have a good showing. This is the news that is going to be around for a little while.
I think we may have lost Rich there, but Rich Stiles, get it back?
I'm back.
Okay. Finish your thought quickly. Obviously, Tiger Woods going to be the news that the sports talks about for a while here.
Yeah, I think definitely that's going to be the case. I mean, people are going to want to find out what was done, how it happened, why it happened. I mean, it was a pretty damaging car crash. I mean, if you saw pictures of the SUV, it was damage. I mean, major damage, and having him to be cut out from that had to be just very sensitive to him and his body and his injuries. And let's just hope that it all comes out okay.
Certainly. Rich Stiles joining us here, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, which you can catch Saturday and Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. Rich, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Rich Stiles joining us here on 3 and Out. And again, the Genesis Open last week was a Tiger Woods event. He was the host of that event. And certainly we'll see what happens as a result of this accident today. But it would appear that not going to be playing in the Masters or golf anytime soon moving forward. But looks like the injury is non-life threatening, which is good. And we'll see what the final report is once the surgeries and all are done about Tiger Woods and his future health.
Well, and this is news that not only, rocks golf and sports, but just news. CNN talking about this, and Ben, you mentioned it. Probably one of the 5 to 10 most famous athletes ever. I mean, internationally ever. When you think about not only what he's meant to the game of golf, but just sports in general. So, just shocking news, startling news. Glad that it's not worse than it is, and we continue to hope and pray for the best.
Yeah, I agree. And at least it's one of those things, Kevin, to BJ, to where now you're kind of. I don't know why it has to be something traumatic for us to be able to tell each other how we feel about each other, but at least he'll get to see just how impactful he is as an individual that far exceeds what he does on the golf course, which BJ, obviously, that's how we learned about Tiger Woods. But one name superstar check, celebrity check, but I'm just happy that it is non-life threatening. And like I told Rich, I hope that he is able to even be at Augusta. I'm not expecting him to get out there on the greens, though.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. It is 3 and Out on this Tuesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, live on ESPNCoastal.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can catch the show on our YouTube channel at ESPN Coastal. There on YouTube, we'll hear from Jay Cruz, UGAsports.com, coming up in about 15 minutes here on the show. But BJ, you're out yesterday, didn't get a chance. I know we love hyping up quarterbacks out there, and folks in these mock drafts enjoy doing it as well. But Matt Miller, Ryan Clark had some thoughts yesterday about Zach Wilson as it compared to the quarterbacks in the draft. We'll start with Matt Miller, let you hear his comments, let you respond, as obviously the hype train really going for Zach Wilson.
The more you talk to evaluators around the NFL, they'll tell you that, hey, let's pump the brakes on this Trevor Lawrence kid a little bit, because while he has been anointed for the past 3 years as the future and savior of football, Zach Wilson, a lot like Joe Burrow last year, really had that ascension in his final year. Things clicked for him. You saw the numbers, the 33 touchdowns while cutting down on his turnovers. And the thing you hear from people around the NFL is this name, Patrick Mahomes, a player who can work off platform, who can drift from the offensive line, that has the arm strength to make up some of those things. And for Zach Wilson, people look at Kyler Murray, they look at Patrick Mahomes, they look at Aaron Rodgers and say, this is where the NFL is going. It's no longer the 6'6" drop back quarterback. The consensus is still Trevor Lawrence. And it's hard, though, for people to buck this trend of there's a lot of groupthink. There was groupthink when Mitchell Trubisky was the first quarterback drafted. Everyone in the NFL told you that's the guy. Everyone thought that. The more you talk to evaluators around the NFL,
and there you go. That's BJ. In that one take, you had, hey, let's pump the brakes on Trevor Lawrence. He had that rise like Joe Burrow in his senior year. And the name you hear around the NFL is Pat Mahomes when talking about Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence, kind of like Mitch Trubisky. He was the guy. So respond to all of that.
Well, for me, I don't know that I see the Mitch Trubisky comparison. That's just me. Now Mitch was, people forget Mitch was very efficient at North Carolina, but just in terms of the macro success, the success on the big stage, doing it right away and kind of maintaining the status quo throughout, I don't see a comparison between Lawrence and Trubisky. Although I do think it's fair to critique Trevor Lawrence. I mean, I agree with those guys that it's not doing your job if you just say, oh, there's no weaknesses, there are no questions. Every player has a weakness. Every player has a question or two. I mean, Ben, I think you said yesterday on the show that Trevor Lawrence is the worst quarterback in the AFC South once he's drafted. Why? Because he hasn't proven it. He hasn't played in the NFL. So I think it's fair to nitpick. I don't see questions with Lawrence that are larger or more pronounced or more, I guess, in total than there are with Zach Wilson or the other quarterbacks on the board. That's just me. I think Lawrence, I do think there are circumstances, rare, where a player kind of validates and affirms himself as the number one overall pick even before he's draft eligible. And I just look at Trevor Lawrence and I see, and trust me, I am well aware of the fact that I don't see the game as a scout or an analyst. I probably know the least about the technical aspect of football as anybody on the show, but I see a guy that has the size, has the measurables, has the proficiency. I don't see where the concerns are.
BJ, I mean, he wasn't really even critiquing Trevor Lawrence as much as he was saying that Zach Wilson had a Joe Burrow type rise in his senior year, which Joe Burrow had the greatest statistical season of anybody in the history of college football in terms of throwing the football and touchdown passes.
Yeah, but if we're being consistent,
do you think Pat Mahomes? Because
I do not. But I can at least appreciate the argument about proficiency, because Zach Wilson did have one of the 5 most proficient seasons in the history of the sport. His passer rating 196.43 is only a couple of ticks below what Joe Burrow did. I think.
Mean, are you going to compare who Zach Wilson did it against versus who Joe Burrow did it against in 7 top 10 teams? I mean, Zach Wilson also lost to Coastal Carolina, which was supposed to be the marquee game they had on their schedule.
Oh, no, I wasn't finished. That's what I was going to say is I do think numbers have to come with context. And Joe Burrow did it against 7 top 25 teams and was absolutely at his best on the big stage. I know some people have said, oh, well, Trevor Lawrence has struggled a little bit maybe against top-tier competition. Well, Trevor Lawrence played 3 games against nationally ranked teams last year. His passer rating was 154. Zach Wilson played one game against the top 25 team last year. His passer rating was 134. So if Trevor Lawrence struggled against nationally ranked teams, that means Zach Wilson really struggled against nationally ranked teams. And that's my concern with Wilson is I love his athleticism, his numbers. You guys know I'm a numbers guy, very impressive. But, Kevin, I don't know that the performances are there against elite defenses. And I will, full disclosure, I've not watched anywhere near the amount of tape as some of these other scouts and analysts have on Zach Wilson. But I did watch the Coastal Carolina game, and he was not good in that game. His numbers were very modest, and keep in mind, he got about 70 of his yards on the last drive where Coastal Carolina was just playing to not allow a touchdown, and they almost did, by the way. But Zach Wilson, to me, has a lot of upside. But in terms of being the polished, pro-ready, answer all the questions, check all the boxes quarterback that Lawrence is, I don't see it. And I think Lawrence, if the question is why wasn't Lawrence better against elite competition, I think we have to ask that about Zach Wilson as well.
And then Ryan Clark weighing in on this as well on yesterday's Get Up.
Listen, I've been saying these same things to you guys for a very long time. And it's not that I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. I just don't think he's a savior. I don't necessarily think he's a can't-miss all-pro Hall of Fame level quarterback. And some of those things that Matt is saying about Zach Wilson, they're intriguing, right? This is where the game is moving. Somebody being able to throw off platform. Also watching a guy play, not necessarily with the best skill players around him, and seeing him elevate those guys. And maybe it's this purple jacket that I wear and the reasons that I wear it. I cannot get out of my mind of Trevor Lawrence walking into the stadium and facing Joe Burrow and being totally outplayed. And then I can't get out of my mind the next year doing the same thing against Justin Fields. When you are a generational talent, when you are a can't-miss prospect, when you're playing with people that are like you, it shows. We watched Deshaun Watson play the Alabama Crimson Tide 2 times. He lost one time and he won the other time. And both times we saw him, we said to ourselves, he was the best player on the field and it wasn't close. Trevor Lawrence is not that. But when you watch Zach Wilson and you think about Mahomes, you think about Josh Allen, you think about Aaron Rodgers, some of the arm talent, the things that they have done and how they translate, Zach Wilson has some of that. I just don't see teams passing on that just because of a few critiques that you can nitpick about Zach Wilson, his competition, or maybe his size.
BJ, your kind of response to that?
Well, I love Ryan. And again, I think it's fair to criticize Trevor Lawrence, but I also think if you're talking about Trevor Lawrence on the big stage, again, Trevor Lawrence played in, 2 national championship games in a college football playoff semifinal. As a freshman, you talk about performances on the big stage. As a freshman against Alabama, he threw for 347 yards and 3 touchdowns. I agree he was not great against Burrow, but for people who critique what he did against Ohio State in the most recent national championship, and if you hear screaming in the background, my kids are going crazy. I got one kid rustling another kid. They're locking each other out of the room, so I don't know what's going on to the left of me. But he threw for 400 yards and 69% completions against Ohio State. So I just think if we're going to nitpick the performances of Trevor Lawrence on the big stage, I agree. I think that's fair, but we have to do the same thing to Zach Wilson. And I'll ask you guys, the Coastal Carolina game, was that Zach Wilson's biggest game last year?
Maybe Boise State's the other one. That's his only top 25 win.
Yeah, but dude, that wasn't a top 10 battle. I mean, that was a signature showcase game, and Zach Wilson did not play well.
Another answer, maybe.
I just think this is what we do. Somebody took 2 pictures of Trevor Lawrence, identical pictures, Kevin. They say, "What's wrong with these pictures?" I don't think that one's real. That one to the left. No, we're looking for something. But I am not mad. I believe what Ryan Clark said is accurate. I don't think that Trevor Lawrence is the savior. He's going to be the number 1 overall pick, and we're gonna see. Can he elevate the status quo of the Jacksonville Jaguars? When you start saying this though, Zach Wilson, man, I mean, despite his competition, despite his size, he's not going to get any bigger. Not going to get any taller.
I mean, Zach Wilson played 1 top 30 defense last year.
Well, and again, we can debate that all day long with how this is going to play out. Obviously, I think Trevor Lawrence's stats and his legacy kind of speak for itself with what he was able to do. We got time for a quick phone call. Let's go to Brock. Brock, you're on 3 and Out. What do you got for us?
Hey, I like what y'all are talking about with Trevor. After the Alabama game, when he destroyed Alabama, there was nowhere to him to go but down a little bit. He peaked in that game, and the sophomore junior year, he got a little bored. Instead of taking what the defense gave him, he would throw into double coverage just to see if he could make that throw. Because he got bored. He knew Pitt was going to win, and he tried to do too much. But there was nowhere he could go but down after that Alabama game. He peaked. And LSU, best team I've ever seen. Ohio State, pretty good football team. Zach Wilson, I don't even know why they talking about him. Thanks.
I certainly understand that, Brock. We appreciate the phone call. And again, we talked about this because Ryan Clark made the Deshaun Watson comparison. Say, hey, he's the best one out there. Deshaun Watson, you mentioned it yesterday, beat Jacob Coker and
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts is a freshman. So he should have been the best guy on the field at those points.
He didn't play senior Joe Burrow in the greatest season of all time, and junior Justin Fields is going to be a top 4 pick.
And again, I'm not saying that to diminish either one of those guys, but there, as you said, no disgrace in saying you got outplayed by a guy who was out of his mind for the entire year at LSU and set records and won the national championship game and obviously had a tremendous team.
I am not taking anything away from Zach Wilson. I think he's a really, really good player. But Kevin, the national narratives, these are the guys we're picking. These are the guys we're talking about. I just don't think that if your narrative is they ain't looking for no 6'6" quarterback no more, who's going to be number 1 pick? A 6'6" quarterback. So, yes, they are looking for a 6'6" quarterback.
Who won the Super Bowl?
A pocket passer that can't move, can't get outside the
back. Okay, but I also want to add this real quick because I think Brock's point is a salient one, and that is sometimes in sports and in life, the worst thing you can do is have immediate success because you set a standard for expectations that cannot be maintained. And after his freshman season, there was literally nothing he could do in terms of wins or in terms of proficiency to improve. So all we can do is nitpick. This kid's the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, and all he did was lose twice, and they were both in the college football playoffs.
We've got more to come. It's 3 and Out. Jay Cruz, UGAsports.com, joins us next all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you were with us here on the program. Rivals putting out their 5-star rankings for the class of 2022. Here to join us to talk about that from UGAsports.com. Jake Roos here on 3 and Out. Jake, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you guys for having me.
Appreciate you coming on. And again, the 5-star rankings are out. And in the initial rankings, Georgia, with 3 of them already, Gunnar Stockton, Keith Alexander, and Tyre West. Talk about those 3 guys and the hot start, obviously, that Kirby Smart's off to.
Yeah, it's huge for Georgia. I think you gain you climb and rank with Bear Alexander. He makes a step up in the rankings. That's huge for Georgia. Was in the discussion to be the nation's number 1 player. So definitely something to watch for over the course of his senior year. For Gunnar Stockton to make that jump, I think not totally unexpected, but huge news for Georgia all the same. To have a 5-star guy under center once again, kind of leading the way for the offensive class in 2022. Just don't think you can underrate that. And then West, he's been a 5-star since the get-go. Good to see him holding on, and I think a guy who is doing a great job recruiting on Georgia's behalf when it comes to the defensive line in 2022.
How much of this is momentum based, Jake, where sometimes you see clusters of 5-stars or blue chip prospects kind of commit around the same time and start to encourage each other on social media, and it just kind of takes on an energy and a momentum all its own?
Yeah, I do think that there's a lot to that. I think, kids want to play with other good players. I think that you see that time and time again. Guys, want to be challenged by guys of similar skill level. And, I think additionally, one of the big considerations you have to make is that most of this class, the vast majority, is from in-state. And, I think during the COVID crisis, that's something that we've seen kind of time and time again is, proximity to home being a big factor for these guys who haven't been able to get out and take a lot of visits elsewhere.
And Jake, some recruiting experts say, setting up this defensive line got a chance to be one of the greatest recruiting classes ever. How much of that credit goes to Trey Scott, and even sticking to what BJ said? How much of that, the fact that these young men now, they know about each other coming into school. It's not the days now to where they don't even meet each other till they get on campus. They already follow each other on social media.
Yeah. Listen, I've said during signing day, and I think moving forward, it's going to come to fruition. Trey Scott, to me, emerging as one of the elite recruiters in the SEC, if not the nation. The work that he's done with Jordan Davis, I think is going to pay dividends for Georgia down the line. Personally, I know I go back to this stat a lot. Georgia hasn't had a defensive lineman drafted in over a decade. The last guy was John Jenkins. So they really want to get that monkey off their back, really have the opportunity to kind of rewrite the story there and, kind of go out and create a better scenario. I think Jordan Davis is kind of rewriting the book for them there. And all that credit is deserved to Trey Scott for recruiting him, for coaching him up, and doing such a fantastic job. But those guys definitely, like you said, there's a lot of familiarity. They know how special this group can be, especially when it comes to in-state guys. And I do think that means a lot to them as well.
I was going to say, Jake, with in-state guys, is it simply a matter of being a great recruiter, or simply that Georgia's a top 5 program and you have the ability to offer them to stay home?
It's both. There's no question about it. Listen, Georgia is a top 5 program, but you've got, 2 other top 5 programs within striking distance of them in Clemson and Alabama, and those guys are recruiting all the same guys. So, it's not necessarily enough to just have that home state feel and that home state pride. You're going to have to be a great recruiter to out-recruit the likes of Nick Saban and the world-class staff that he's putting together so frequently. So, I think that it's a situation for Georgia where, they've got both aspects really well covered. Guys feel comfortable about staying in state, and they've got great guys that are out there pursuing them.
In terms of the top 5-star prospects, you mentioned Alabama and Nick Saban. Are we to a point now with Georgia's recruiting success where really Alabama is their only consistent recruiting rival, or are there kind of a collection of teams that Georgia regularly battles with?
Yeah, I think that there's still a couple of schools out there. As I mentioned, I think Clemson is kind of a pick and choose school. They can kind of, get about anybody that they'd like to have. I think LSU, for all the, trouble, I guess, circling over the head of that program that it seems is still as world-class recruiting as you're going to find. That's a program that's always attracting top talent. Ohio State's right there. And I'll tell you, out west, Oregon has emerged as a recruiting powerhouse. Maybe not recruiting at the same level as Georgia right now, but they've done a great job of keeping those kids out west home, and that's been a big detriment because Georgia's gone after several of them very, very hard.
And Jake, how much on the recruiting trail is these coaches and Kirby saying, listen, this next group could be the group. Obviously, we're not too many years removed from them guys playing Alabama down to the wire in the national championship game. I mean, that kind of stuff is of recent memory to some of these guys. They walk into these living rooms. How much is that being said? Saying, look, man, we right there. The notion of we keep on knocking at the door, we're going to knock it down. That's got to be one of the recruiting pitches to these guys coming in here.
Absolutely, there's no question about it. I mean, at this point, Georgia has a lot of talent. You can't just sell on the opportunity of playing time. You have to be able to sell on the fact of, hey, we're a piece or two away from being where we want to be, and where we want to be as national champions. You could be that piece, and I think that really rings true with kids. A lot of these kids in this 2022 class have only kind of come up under Kirby Smart's era at Georgia, at least from being really young. So they've seen this team in national championship. They've seen this team, in the Rose Bowl. They've seen them playing on multiple New Year's Day bowls. Overall, it's a great situation for Georgia to be in, and that continued success is definitely bearing fruit for them.
Jake Roos, UGAsports.com, joining us, and it's expected Georgia have spring practice coming up starting sometime in March. How do you see the rotation kind of playing out at some of those skill positions for Georgia once we get there?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's going to be really interesting. I think the wide receiver position, certainly George Pickens, Kearis Jackson, Jermaine Burton, you feel like those guys are all kind of front line of the pack. But how does an experienced guy like Demetrius Robertson, who's been around, been waiting for a turn, how does he factor in there? Does Dominic Blaylock come back and come into form? Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, how far along is he in his rehab? Is he going to be able to be the player some people thought he was? Arian Smith is a guy who made the most of his opportunities consistently when he was on the field for Georgia. How does he factor in as well? I think that, to me, that skill position is among the biggest question marks on Georgia's team, not from a lack of talent standpoint, mind you, but just how they're going to be able to handle that dearth of talent that they've got.
How unsettled is the depth chart at cornerback and safety right now defensively?
I think that there's definitely some concern in terms of, who's 1 and 1A and all that. But, I think that they feel comfortable with how they stand at those positions. I think that you can kind of clearly find that out based on what happened with Drayson Miller out of West Virginia, who ends up going to Auburn, via the transfer portal. Georgia had every conceivable advantage when it came to recruiting that kid. Home state school, just hired his position coach, who turned him into an all-conference player. Just a lot working and a need at the position. And, I think the fact that they kind of, decided not to pursue as heavily as some people might have initially thought gives you an indication to how they feel about the guys that they have back there. I feel that it's a lot like the wide receiver position. There's a lot of talent, but still a lot of unknown. I think that they'll be able to sort a lot of that out over the course of spring practice.
And Jake, obviously, Zamir White decided to come back to a very, very crowded, very, very talented running back room. How competitive could that position get this year? And obviously, it's probably going to have to be a three-headed monster competing for snaps on Saturday.
Man, you got to wonder if 3 heads are even going to be enough to feed all those mouths. You got to, how does Kenny McIntosh factor into this? How does Kendall Milton factor into this? Lavassier Carroll, a talented guy. There's a number of guys out there for Georgia when it comes to those reps at Daijun Edwards as well. I mean, how did they feed all these guys and keep them all happy? I think that, there's a lot of mouths to feed back there, but certainly it allows Georgia, I think, a lot of flexibility when they get into those situations to play ball control, because they feel like they can take you and grind you down with that stable of running backs. Obviously, given the trend that we've seen over the course of the SEC in the last couple of years and within college football, they realize the necessity of being able to score from anywhere and at any time. But at the same time, when those guys are called upon, they're going to be able to make an impact, and they've got a number of guys there that can handle that load.
Jake Roos, UGAsports.com, our guest here on 3 and Out. Jake, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys for having me.
Appreciate it. Again, Georgia's set to have spring practice coming up sometime starting in the middle portion of March. But the 5-star rankings out on Rivals, Georgia with 3 already in for Kirby Smart in the class of 2022. We'll come back with more 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. Final hour of 3 and Out here all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you were with us here on this Tuesday. Plenty to get to here in the final hour of the program. We'll talk some Braves baseball coming up in about 30 minutes here on the show. But we had such a busy hour, too, talking about the latest with Tiger Woods, Jay Cruz dropping by, and more, that we have to hit take 3 here in the top of the final hour of the program. So without further ado, we'll see. Wait till we get it queued up here, and we'll take 3 here on 3 and Out on this Tuesday. But plenty to come here. Some Braves talk as they are back at it. Now we're ready to take 3. All right, fellas, take 1, or actually all the takes, I should say, going to be about the same thing. We talked a lot about last couple of days about Matt Miller comparing Zach Wilson to Burrow and some of the things like that. So each of the takes will simply consist of a name. You give me the players at their position. We will compare them to. Start with take 1, Joe Burrow.
I mean, Kevin, can I ask a question? Am I off a segment on my end?
I believe you might be. I'm off a segment. Are we not at the top of the 5 o'clock hour?
You keep saying it's the final hour. It is not the final hour.
I was waiting for the final hour. My mind is already there. So it's not. Kill it. I've been worse. Post it, DJ. I was ready to go. But so we'll take 3 next hour.
It's a good take 3. I'm excited too. I'm ready to go. But the whole time you keep talking about the final hour, I'm looking at my clock going, is my computer broken? Is my laptop broken?
No. We just had
looking at my clock, so there you go.
We just had radio gold.
These things happen.
No, this is no BJ. The radio gold moment of 3 and Out so far in 2021 is, oh, my bad. Kill it. Music goes off. Kill it. Like right now. We don't give him no more. Kevin is a professional, people. But guess what? Professionals, hey, man, he got a lot on his mind. BJ goes, we looking at the right. Listen. We went to a fast food restaurant to order number 1. And then they said, what's the number 1? Am I looking at the same number 1 out here that you looking at in there? I don't know. Are you?
Apparently, I had already mentally moved to the final hour of the show. So I was looking at the final rundown, and I was like, okay, here we go. And then I just was like, hey, let's do take 3, man. Let's get to it. I'm eagerly awaiting getting to take 3. That's all I can say for myself.
Cody, so Cody or Christian, whomever working the board, looking at you like this. He said, listen, run it. You run it. All right. You want me to run it? I'm going to run it.
No, I gave a look at Cody. I'm like, are we doing this? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, do it. Sometimes you just get that look and it's like, hey, I might be wrong, but you go with it. And apparently I wrote it all the way into oblivion there, trying to do take 3 in a minute and a half.
Well, I mean, time is a flat circle. So theoretically, you could have been caught in a loop. I mean,
nope, that didn't happen. None of that happened. I just messed up. Sorry. I apologize to everyone out there.
Now, you better be lucky BJ's on the show, because if it would have been you and me and Kevin, I would have been asked, LeVar Arrington, I would have just been like, you better hold up. Wait a minute. Let's hold that thought. No, I like it. He said, kill it. I love it.
So we will get to take 3 when we come back. That will be the final hour, and it's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out. It is the final hour of the show. We are all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We are live there as well. Glad you're with us here on the show. We will talk some Braves baseball here this hour, and we will take 3 here in the final hour of the show. See, it goes much smoother when everybody's on the same page.
I think the rest of us were on the same page.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So we're all squared away now. So take 3. I guess I need to reread the whole question. Since we talked to Matt Miller the last couple of days, he's comparing Zach Wilson to Joe Burrow, which I think is a little nuts. Let us be the ones who decide who to compare players to. I will give you a name for each take. You give me the player that is at their position that we are best allowed to compare them to. So we start there with Joe Burrow. Take 1.
I think it's Tua. I think when you think about the history of college football, SEC football, they will forever be right there alongside each other. What Tua did from a proficiency standpoint was the new modern standard right before Joe Burrow edged out Tua and set a new record. Both guys not only were historically efficient, but changed the way traditional running teams played football. Alabama has been a lineup, grinded out, even under Nick Saban, O-lineman, running back based, kind of theme team. With Tua, they're throwing it around 45 times in the first half with Jerry Jeudy and Jalen Waddle and Henry Ruggs and Devonta Smith, and it was remarkable. And then Joe Burrow setting all the marks, not just the passer rating mark, but the yardage total, the touchdown total. Basically, Jamar Chase having 2 All-American seasons in one season, and then those guys both drafted in the top 5. I know Burrow's gotten off to a better start than Tua, but both dealt with injuries recently. I think Tua and Joe Burrow are kind of the natural comps to each other.
For me, I think it's Jameis Winston. I think you talk about having a team that the one missing piece was that quarterback. You had a guy that went out there and just, with everything that was around him, it always came back to the quarterback. It always came back to Joe Burrow. Yeah, you had Jamar Chase. You had Jefferson, those guys. Yeah, you had, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, BJ. But I just think about both guys went undefeated. Both guys won the Heisman. And both guys for 1 year, for one season, they were the one that made it all come together. With everything that they had around them, if they don't play the way they play, it's all for naught. So for me, I know, it's yet to be determined what Joe Burrow is going to do, both with the number 1 overall pick. I just think that, for one season, I'm going to say Jameis Winston, man, because the whole thing about it is, just like that year, you kept on waiting on Jameis to make a mistake, and he wouldn't. Oh, this going to be, and he wouldn't. And he always came through to make a big play. So for 1 year, I'm going to say Jameis Winston and Joe Burrow.
If you just go on the straight, what happened in their 1 year? Cam Newton, they both kind of came on the scene. Cam Newton out of junior college, he said, hey, Cam Newton can be pretty good. Boom, did things that we'd never seen before. Statistically, same with Joe Burrow in his senior season there at LSU. Not saying they're the same player. Don't get me confused on that one. But moving along, take 2. Herschel Walker.
I think when you talk about Herschel Walker, somebody that you can mention right alongside is Adrian Peterson. And I'm not talking necessarily about Adrian Peterson from Oklahoma here. I'm talking about Adrian Peterson from Georgia Southern. When you look at his production, when you look at his work rate, when you look at his success, the championships, he might be the standard for running backs all time. I've said this before, but and I'm more of a tier thinker. I give credit to Jim Johnson for that while in our minds, we kind of like to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of the GOATs. It makes more sense to have a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. If you want to tell me Georgia Southern's Adrian Peterson is the greatest running back of all time, I'll agree. I think what he's done is beyond parallel. And if you want to put guys in that tier 1, I think alongside Herschel, I think it would be, of course, AP. I think it would be Bo Jackson. I think it would be Reggie Bush. I think it would be Darren McFadden. I think it would be Barry Sanders going back to before my time. And I think it would be Travis Etienne. Maybe a handful of guys that I'm not thinking about off the top of my head, but I think that would be the group. But in terms of a direct parallel to Herschel Walker. I know a lot of people will say Bo. I know that's your guy, Kevin, but I'll say Adrian Peterson out of Georgia Southern.
I'll go a different route, BJ. I mean, the whole thing about it is when I think about Herschel Walker, I think about a guy who he was the offense. I think about a guy who you knew what the team was what Georgia's gonna do coming into the game, coming out of the game, very, very highly decorated, and a guy that did it in a time to where okay, Herschel Walker's gonna be our end all be all. This is gonna be a name that people don't talk about enough at the running back position. Both wore number 34, both won the Heisman, both were warmed out. I'm gonna go with Ricky Williams. See, people don't remember how great Ricky Williams was at Texas. He was just as good, if not as good, as Herschel. No, he did not win a national championship, but if they had any kind of success at Texas, it was because of number 34, Ricky Williams. Obviously, he had an incredible career too, in the National Football League. But I remember Ricky Williams when he was at Texas. He was the truth, man. That's not taking nothing away from Herschel. I know, BJ, when we start talking about the top 5, top 10, you're gonna have the Darren McFadden's and the Reggie Bushes, of the world, and the Travis Etiennes and the Dalvin Cooks. Do not leave out number 34. Number 34 got retired at Georgia, and number 34 got retired at Texas because both of them were the truth. So for me, when I think of Herschel, I think of a back. You got to give him a lot of carries, get a big back that gets better as the game goes. I think of Ricky Williams.
All right, and moving on, take 3, LeVar Arrington.
Yeah, and this is a guy that is probably the standard collegiately. When I think about, I'll separate it into a couple of categories here, because when I think about college linebacker play, and LeVar Arrington's college career is kind of right when I started to pay attention and understand what was going on. But to me, Luke Kuechly, I've never seen a college linebacker like Luke Kuechly. Had almost 500 tackles and went pro after his junior year. And it wasn't like he was just a tackling machine, was double-digit tackles for loss every year, double-digit passes defended, elevated Boston College. Boston College was nationally ranked. Luke Kuechly, to me, is the greatest college linebacker I've ever seen. And I would say he's right there with LeVar Arrington, who admittedly, again, is right there kind of before my time, or right on the brink of when I started to pay attention and understand what was going on. So I'll say Luke Kuechly. And then in the pros, I think it's Derek Brooks. I think Derek Brooks is, and Ben, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, weak side is his.
Yes, weak side linebacker, yes.
I don't know that I've seen anybody like that. Now, a different player than Ray Lewis. I think Ray Lewis is obviously a GOAT. Derek Brooks in his own right. But I would say when I think about LeVar Arrington in the pros, I would think about Ray Lewis and Derek Brooks. Those will be the guys that are right there.
The thing about LeVar Arrington is when he played for Penn State, BJ, I mean, unless you just knew football, you would think he played the quarterback position, because that's all they talked about. I mean, Courtney Brown, I only knew who Courtney Brown was for the draft because he ran a 4.56, 265 pounds. That's the reason why he went. I think LeVar Arrington went number 2. But when I think about LeVar Arrington, I think about a guy who won every award, and you forgot what position he played because he was Penn State. I think it's Manti Te'o. When Manti Te'o was at Notre Dame, you was like, dude, who is this dude? Now, I'm talking about the football player. I'm not talking about, the catfishing. I'm not talking about that part. I'm just talking about the football player. Because think about it, BJ. He elevated the status quo of Penn State because he was incredible, highly decorated. I remember him at the College Football Awards, getting interviewed, and he just had that poker face. They're like, look, man, it's cool, man. Like, you can calm that down a little bit. We know jumping over guys to make tackles on 4th and 1. So I compare him to Manti Te'o. As far as like his impact in college. Now in the pros, I would say more of a Patrick Willis because they didn't play that long. But dude, the impact they had on a short amount of time. Because I don't compare nobody. Listen, nobody compares to Derek Brooks. I'm sorry. I mean, Derek Brooks has a defense named after him. The Tampa 2, they ran it because there was a linebacker running down the center of the field. That would be number 55. I don't know what outside of LeVar Arrington wearing them high top cleats. Like on the movie The Program, BJ, and have to have abs back in the day because they had the short jerseys. Nobody compares to Derek Brooks. I'm just saying, I had a cup of coffee with Derek Brooks, got a chance to meet him when I was with
Hold on, man. How would you have done with the short jerseys? Because I do miss it. Dude, those were hard.
I will say this. Okay. Now, we wouldn't have had the movie wasn't out then, but we had to go. Whoever trained, all those guys on the movie 300, because all of them was amped up. I mean, 6-pack, 12 packs.
I think the computer did a lot of training there.
Well, all I'm saying is, I would have like, Coach, listen, can I get the computer generated? Why? Because, man, I'm just saying, think about it. Guys got off the ground real slow then, and just like, it's like, yeah, that's me right there, the V shape. No, BJ, it would have been smooth. That's back when you got the big old hip pads coming out on the side. All the guys had practice jersey with numbers on them. It was cool. Kevin Carter, we used to mess with him. I said, Kevin Carter, I said, listen, man, how was it knowing that when you played, everybody wore black cleats? Like everybody, like that's it. They didn't have colors. But no, LeVar Arrington is a man. I will say that old Fred T used to have a little cut off with a little tights underneath. That was smooth. But yeah, man, make sure you get your abs on. Ain't nobody trying to deal with them beer bellies back in the day. That wasn't happening. No.
Yeah, that's a good look, especially if you're a linebacker. If you can rock that, you do it. Right?
Oh yeah.
No, and Ben, you're still jealous of Kendall Pope, man. But listen,
whoa. Hold on. Wait. No. Because I knew BJ gonna throw a jab. I'm out there against Florida State, and I'll be like, I hear this. Yeah, you better get down. And I turn around, and I say, he said, you better get down. I turn around again. He goes down here. I said, oh, you a little itty bitty little man. Man, no, I'm just playing. I respect Kendall Pope, BJ. But what happened? I'm just saying. He's 5'8.5", and then he got to get down in his stance right before. I did get covered by a little person when I played in high school. He played for Warner Robins.
All right, I don't know anything about that. I'm not. What I'm saying is the only reason I brought up Kendall Pope was not because of his size, was because of the cowboy collar, man. Yeah, Kevin was talking about what a classic linebacker. LeVar Arrington, you saw him and went, that's a linebacker. If you're a linebacker, you got to have the short jersey. You got to have, like you said, the hip pads, and you got to have either the neck roll or the cowboy collar.
I will say this. Out of all the Miami linebackers, I got a chance to go up against, Bill Mano's guys, but BJ, and he just got inducted to the College Football Hall of Fame. Dan Morgan was a linebacker. He did not like people. I think he spent his whole career in Carolina, got the thick neck, like he walked around, he ain't got no neck. He back then, he just, I'm just saying that those are the linebackers I like, the guys that don't like people. They only smile at their wives and kids. Everybody else, I got a problem with you.
That's take 3. We do it.
Dan Morgan, Dan know
that. We'll come back. There's more to come. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Jay and Ben, glad you're with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network and ESPNCoastal.com, where you can catch a live audio stream there. We're also live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. So you can see us there, get an archive version of the show, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. So glad you were with us. We'll hear from Roddy Jones, ACC Network, coming up in just a little bit. But we look at now heading into the spring, BJ and Ben, a lot of winners out there in the transfer portal game. And so much that I saw this the other day where there are still tons of guys sitting in the transfer portal and nowhere to go. So you had way more guys in the transfer portal than there were spots, but certain teams came out on top. Florida, Oklahoma, Miami, Florida State. Who do you think was the big winner in the transfer portal game here in 2021?
Yeah, it's interesting to evaluate the transfer portal results because different teams have different needs. I think both Florida and Florida State did really well. Florida didn't necessarily need kind of the 7-8 person transfer class that Florida State did. They needed to fine tune a few things, right? And they were able to do that. You need to get a boost in the ground game. You get a 5-star from Clemson and DeMarcus Bowman. You need to find a way to replace Kyle Pitts. How do you do that? Maybe only one or two players in the whole country have the athletic kind of profile that Kyle Pitts did. You get Eric Gilbert from LSU. You get some defensive line depth. So I really like what Dan Mullen did. And I know there have been, Ben, I've seen you talk about it on Twitter, kind of some relative criticisms of Dan Mullen and kind of how he recruits, maybe in comparison to Kirby Smart. Understand this is a part of recruiting. When you look at the talent that a coach brings in or a staff brings in, it's not just the high school talent. It is the transfer talent as well. And I think that's an important distinction to make when you think about Florida State. Florida State only brought in 16 or 17 high school kids, and the reason is because they desperately needed some experience. They had a lot of roster attrition. Of course, with coaching changes, you have transfers, and you had a number of guys enter the NFL draft early. Florida State needed some guys that had played some football. They needed some juniors. They needed some seniors. And I thought Mike Norvell did a really good job. Most notably, Mackenzie Milton comes in, was one of the best players in the country not long ago. We'll see how healthy he is. But beyond Mackenzie Milton, you got some help on defense. Jermaine Johnson, Dog fans, you know that name. He's a pass rusher. You get Jamie Robinson, who was an all-SEC caliber safety for South Carolina. So I think there are different ways to go about it. You look at Miami, who had success again. Their team last year, 3 or 4 of their best players were transfers. So you can be very successful either kind of identifying a couple of needs like Dan Mullen did and addressing them in the best possible way, or even trying to replicate some experience on your own roster like Mike Norvell's doing. I would agree with the teams that we mentioned as being winners. Oklahoma as well, getting Wanya Morris. That's a huge get along the offensive line for the Sooners. But I think that, yeah, the Florida schools probably lead the way when you think about who had success in the portal.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Florida State did the best because, BJ, at the end of the day, you want to be able to have stability at the quarterback position. And the thing is, when you look at a guy like Mackenzie Milton, people's asking, is he going to come back to UCF? You know, you see, obviously, a Heifel has moved on, to Tennessee. How is his health going to be? It's going to come down to that offensive line. And the thing about it is college is built, real similar to the pros. When you got a very, very young team, it's going to be hard to win at key positions. So I just think that when you look at what Florida State was able to get Mackenzie Milton, Brandon Moore, Jarquez, McClendon. You talk about Jamie Robinson, BJ Jermaine Johnson. So you got some position needs. Safety, you got a pass rusher, you got a quarterback. You kind of like mix and match. And the thing about Florida is, I like the additions they got, but I love the fact that they got DeMarcus Bowman. They showed him yesterday catching a wheel route. You know what they didn't show him doing? Run the football. And for him to be effective, they're going to have to run the football. And everybody gets known. Everybody gets they get known for certain things. If you are Dan Mullen, you don't look at recruiting rankings. You can't stand it. Why? Because the team that you got to play every year named Georgia, they're going to be in the top 1, 2, or 3. But what he does in the transfer portal, BJ, is really, really good when you talk about being able to snatch guys out of it. But
Ben, I just want to interrupt you for a second. As a Georgia fan, watching that wheel route, I was having PTSD flashbacks to Jacksonville.
I wasn't going to say anything. Was that
200 yards receiving for backs in that game? Yeah, that was the most horrifying video I've seen in a while.
Yeah, I mean, and Bowman would catch one yesterday. You know, a nice little over the shoulder throw from Emory Jones.
Stop it.
I want to see running backs, you know, run the football. But I just think that when you look at teams like, you know, you look at teams like Miami, you look at teams like Florida, the Florida State, the big three. I like the fact that they're saying, look, if we can't do it in recruiting, we'll do it in the transfer portal. And the thing about the transfer portal, you talk about guys who now they decide where they want to go. As far as like, I've been in college a little bit, what's going to fit, what I do best. So yeah, I think, and obviously Oklahoma getting 1 year Morris. I mean, I was joking about him, Kevin, I was like, can he sing? For those of you who don't know who 1 year Morris, that is the lead singer, Boyz II Men. Yeah. I am telling my age. It's fine.
It's sorry, yeah, but I do believe, like, as you see the transfer portal become more and more involved, I think coaches will, in some ways, treat that like recruiting. It used to be, BJ, you've seen this evolve, where the transfer is like, okay, a guy wants to graduate transfer. We have an opening at guard. He's a guy that can come in and maybe help us out a little bit if he wants to play one more year. Now, I mean, you look at the transfer portal. I mean, Florida State, 6 very good players. I mean, that is a recruiting class where you can,
Texas State didn't sign a high school player.
Right. Yeah, Texas State did nothing but junior college and transfer portal guys. So I look at it as, especially if I'm a mid-major, I can hit the transfer portal and get a more experienced team quicker than doing regular recruiting, right? I mean, I can go recruit high school guys that I got to develop, or I can go get a guy that's been at another school for 2 years, unhappy, and wants to come in, and you get a more experienced player in some instances, and you can supplement that with recruiting there with the transfer portal.
You better hope he's immediately eligible, though.
Well, I mean, I understand that, but it does not seem like we're floating towards that.
Floating towards doesn't mean you're there.
I understand that, but we got a free transfer this year, and I think you've seen a lot of players, a lot of teams take advantage of the fact that, hey, that guy's unhappy, come here, play right away. It's fine. I mean, so I think if that continues to be the norm, it's like, hey, you're allowed a one-time, and there are talks about, hey, allowing NCAA student athletes a one-time penalty-free transfer in the future. I think you could see that become a major part of recruiting, where a team that doesn't recruit in the top 25 can say, I don't need to recruit in the top 25, but I can recruit guys who were in the top 25 and get them into my program and build with those guys.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting the number of different ways you can go at building a roster now. And we've talked with a number of coaches about kind of the nature of where we are, where technically no eligibility expired last year. So you could have a roster where you have a number of guys who are in their 5th year potentially. You've had the transfer portal become a much more common reality. So you could have a roster where you're having to replace a third of your production, a third of your personnel. There are wide varieties in where programs are. But I will say this, I thought you made a good point, Kevin, that, and this shouldn't have been the case, but it's just kind of the way the narrative went. Not long ago, I think you looked at a transfer player and you were like, yeah, maybe it didn't work out at school X, so maybe he's not the caliber of player that you're going to get via the recruiting ranks. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys, the last 3 Heisman winning quarterbacks were all transfers. Joe Burrow started out at Ohio State, Kyler Murray started out at Texas A&M, and Baker Mayfield started out at Texas Tech. So you're not just getting transfers that are, being rotational guys or even stepping into starting roles, but aren't necessarily superstars. The best players in college football are transferring. I mean, and there are countless examples, but I do think this will be a litmus test, guys, for kind of the macro usage of the portal. What happens at Florida State this year? Because you're going to see when a 5-star like Gilbert or Bowman enters the portal, they're going to have their suitors. I think in total, Kevin, Mike Norvell brought in 8 transfers, and I think 6 or 7 of them, like you mentioned, are projected to come in and start right away. And if that can kind of accelerate Florida State's rebuilding process, don't be surprised if you see more programs fragment their high school scholarships with their transfer scholarships moving forward.
I mean, like I said, when you look at what goes on in the NFL, it goes on in college. We just call it different things. I mean, the draft, it's called recruiting in college. The free agency is called a transfer portal. It is the exact same. Ain't no money being exchanged unless you go to Tennessee, you get McDonald's bags. But I'm just saying, when you look at the fact, Kevin and BJ, think about that. So not only do I got to worry about the guy that's in high school, now I got to worry about the guy that's in college already, because they want to build around college-ready players. That's why the transfer portal is very, very, it's troublesome, for guys that trying to, trying to come into college because they always keeping their eye on you. When you start saying, man, they got five-star quarterbacks, they had 5. They're gonna have 3, at the end of this year. So, and like you said, BJ, the fact that the last 3 Heisman winning quarterbacks were all transfers, you don't think other coaches looking at that? You don't think if people say just go out there and get Nick Saban, you don't think somebody said I can go out there and get me a Kyler Murray or Baker Mayfield or Joe Burrow? It sounds unrealistic to us, but to them, that's what they're looking for. So, yeah, the fact that the transfer portal is taking essentially scholarships away from guys in high school is becoming more the norm, and that's why they won't. That's probably a big reason why they won't grant. I can leave the school X and go to school Y, and I can play, because if I make them wait a year to play, that might be a reason why they decide not to go to certain schools.
And again, we'll see how that transfer portal continues to evolve in the coming years. We'll come back. We'll chat with Roddy Jones, ACC Network, talk a little college football with him. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you're with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. And again, 2020, 2021, it's all been, tough on a lot of folks, a lot of businesses. And we here at ESPNCoastal.com understand that. And we appreciate all the support of local businesses here to help us with our show, with our programming that we're able to put out there as well. So that being said, we're looking to give a little bit back here in 2021. If you own a business, we're looking to give away a free Brave sponsorship coming up here in 2021 for your business. All you need to do is go to ESPNCoastal.com. Right there on the front page, you'll see in the news feed place to click, and you can register your business. We'll have that drawing coming up on March 24th. So you have a month to do so. We'll have that drawing coming up on March 24th, which is about a week before opening day. So if you have a business, go to ESPNCoastal.com and check it out. Register your business. We'll be giving away a free Brave sponsorship here in 2021 as a thank you. So do that. I encourage you. If you own a business or if you work at a business, which a lot of you do, tell your boss, go there and register for your chance to win there, ESPNCoastal.com. Speaking of the Braves, Grapefruit League starts on Sunday, BJ, and that puts us just over a month away from April 1, where the Braves will get started. I believe they start with 5 or 6 straight day games to start the season, and a lot of National League East games to get things started. So you got to come out of the gate. I wouldn't say come out of the gate swinging with that horrible pun, but you got to show up strong, ready to go come April 1.
Yeah, and I'm excited. I'm anxious to have some baseball to overreact to, but I do think, and I'm talking to myself here more than I am just the audience or you guys, I do think a lot of the production that we see or don't see is sort of irrelevant. Like Freddie Freeman, doesn't matter what he does in spring. Ozzie Albies, I know he had a bit of a downturn last year, but I don't think it really matters what he does in spring. The outfield, regardless of what Pache does, I think you'd like for him to have some momentum, but he's going to have to learn it and kind of deal with it and adjust and ultimately find his way as a starting center fielder. And it almost doesn't matter what he does in spring. Ozuna's going to be Ozuna. Acuna's going to be Acuna. I mean, to me, Kevin, the one guy, and I'm talking about the field players who needs a good spring, I think it's Austin Riley. Because, and some folks may disagree, I think even if Christian Pache hits 200, he's your everyday center fielder. He's so good defensively. He's so young. You're going to let him kind of grow with it. I think Austin Riley, if he hits 200 in spring, I mean, I think that could be a little different.
Sure. I think that's a guy you look at, you say, hey, are we going down the Dan Uggla repeat here where we have a guy we think can be a big-time player for us, not hitting his weight there in spring training? Some guys, Freddie Freeman hits 200, you probably don't think much about it. You've got a proven track record. I think Austin Riley, you'd like to see a good spring out of him. And again, you'd like to see this roster kind of come together over the course of spring. Looking at the schedule, the first 13 games of the season, all against the National League East. The first 13 games. The first 9 are against the Phillies and the Nationals. So it's right there for you to get off to a good start. You get off to a bad start, you're already behind in division chasing. You get off to a good start, conversely, you might be out to a 2-3 game lead in the division, which is a good buffer to have considering you've gotten a nice chunk of divisional games out of the way in the first 14 games.
Yeah, but Kevin, even with, I mean, when you think about this Braves team, obviously, I mean, I like the fact that the Braves don't got a lot of question marks going until like the Grapefruit League. And I do agree. We've been hearing about Austin Riley. How much of that, BJ and Kevin, I ask both of y'all. Obviously, when he first got called up, I mean, he was leaving the yard. I mean, it was like, this dude here is box office. But then, like anything else, they're going to figure out, no, the pitches you cannot hit. And once they were like, well, dude, he going to swing it a lot. It wasn't really his best effort. Do you think that? Do they? What is Snitker telling Austin Riley going into like this Grapefruit League? Is he telling him, look, man, we want you to work at your plate appearances, but we don't want you to overthink it either. Because I do agree, you want him to look good, BJ, but at the same time, if he looks too good, you're like, well, can he carry that over into the regular season, or do you say to yourself, look, we just want you to go out there and show some poise, show some level of comfort. That way we feel comfortable about saying we're running you out there. Like, Kevin, what would you have to see in games that don't count to feel good about running Austin Riley out there every day to be your everyday starter at third?
I mean, I don't need to see 300. I just want to see some consistency. Are you having good at bats? Are you hitting the ball hard? And I think that's one of those things that I kind of looked at with Dansby Swanson a couple years ago. People were really down on him. They looked at the batting average, said, "Hey, he's hitting, what was it, like 197 or 205, somewhere around that general area." And I'm like, yeah, he's putting the ball in play though, and he's putting the ball in play hard according to the metrics. That usually means good things are on the horizon if you're doing that. And eventually it is. I think if you're Austin Riley, you want to see good plate appearances and a good approach. Why? Like you said, he came up and was really hot. Same thing happened to Ronald Acuna, by the way. Ronald Acuna came up, was really hot. Then teams adjusted to how they were pitching him. Then you have to adjust back a little bit. I think baseball is kind of a game of constant adjustments. How do you hit the ball? Teams are going to adjust. Once you adjust to the way they're pitching you, you'll start to have some success. They'll adjust a little bit against you there, and you have to adjust. So for a young player like Austin Riley, he's got a lot of potential. I think I would tell him, look, go up there, have a good approach, and let's work on, pitch recognition and having a good game plan when you're up there at the plate, because they're going to, if there's things you struggle at, you're just going to keep seeing it until you show them you can hit it. And I thought at times he did a better job of that, and at times he didn't. I think you're going to go through that with a young player, and I think certainly in the sports age we're in, and just society in general, people don't like to wait for things. They're like, hey, we need you hitting 300 with 30 bombs right now, and you haven't allowed him some time to figure that out. I would say that with any young player. Ronald Acuna, hey, he's going to be good. If he struggles, let him work it out at the big league level. Pitchers have been the same way. Max Fried struggles. You got to learn to pitch at the big league level and work through that. Ian Anderson's going to have some of that this year. Batters adjust to him. Let him work through it. Don't panic. Let him get through it here at the big league level. Austin Riley, to me, no different.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. I want to see him learn how to ride the ebbs and flows, where you're going to have to swing your way out of a slump. You're going to have to try to stretch out a hot streak as long as you can. I do think, Ben, going back to what you said about him being comfortable, I do think the addition of Marcell Ozuna, or the re-signing of Marcell Ozuna, helps him. Because if Marcell Ozuna is not on this roster, because keep in mind, Acuna is the leadoff hitter. I mean, you're the back half of the order, with Freddie Freeman batting third, power hitter. There is a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. If you're Austin Riley and there's no Marcell Ozuna, I think the team's looking around going, hey, man, we need you to hit 20-plus home runs. Like, if you don't, we may not be contending because you have to meet a certain power threshold. And without Marcell Ozuna, who, again, led the National League in home runs last year, the lineup looks a lot different. And the responsibility is more pronounced on Austin Riley's shoulders. Maybe he even bats a spot or two up in the order if Marcell Ozuna is not there. So the fact that now the top half of the order is complete with Acuna, Freeman, Ozuna, and I think a return to form from Albies, I think if you're Austin Riley, it allows you to take a deep breath and just play, man. It's like, you know that you're not the number one option. You're not even the number 2, 3, 4, 5 option offensively. You just need to go out there and produce and play your game. And I think had Ozuna not been re-signed, and maybe if you were looking at an outfield of Inciarte, Pache, and Acuna, I think you would be looking at third base saying, dude, we got to have it. Like, whether you're ready or not, we have to have a power bat in the lineup. You're 230 pounds. You've had a power streak at the major league level before. Now, I think, Ben, his production is a luxury and not a necessity. And I think that's a lot easier on an athlete's mind.
Yeah, but I think it is a necessity, because the whole thing about it is, I mean, me and Kevin was talking about this one time, BJ, every team in pro sports is made up the same way. You got superstars, you got role players. And the thing about it is, you need your superstars to show up in the big moments, but role players, they're going to be the reason why you win those games. Like, what's the difference between winning, 80 games or 85 games? And the thing about Austin, he's supposed to feel it. Hey, Austin. Hey, man, I think it was cute. When you first came up, man, there was no pressure on Austin, and he played like there was no pressure. Now, how do you play when there are expectations? Because people think, oh, well, Ben, I was a role player. I enjoyed being a role player because I saw what superstars had to deal with. So, but at the same time, role players and superstars, sometimes they intertwine with each other. Sometimes you can be in a superstar role even though you're a role player. The thing about Austin is, while he should love the fact they got Marcell, BJ, he better play like they don't got him. That's how he need to play, because Marcell got his Marcell going, for 3 homers in Fenway. Marcel doing selfies. Marcel knows I ain't here for my defense at all. But when Marcel gets to the plate, I think with Austin, he's got to be a two-way guy. He's got to be a above average third baseman, and he got to learn not to get up there on that plate and look like he's just swinging at anything they throw at him. I mean, I'm obviously, people, once again, I have all the faith in the world in Austin, but I don't agree that he's not a necessity. If you start for the Braves, you are a necessity. You better play like it, because what's going to happen, BJ, like Kevin said, he's in a slump. And, you know, when the coach is yelling at you, it's because they care. When it's like this, Austin, oh, never mind. You see what I'm saying? It's like we need Austin Riley to be.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. This is all I'm saying. If Marcell Ozuna is not on the team and Austin Riley hits 230 with 9 home runs, I don't think you're making the playoffs. Now that Marcell Ozuna is on the team, this would not be an ideal situation. But if Austin Riley hits 230 with 9 home runs, I think you can find a way to absorb it, make it work, kind of mix match the roster, etc. Because you know that you're going to have not only one, not only two, but 3 of the premier hitters in all of baseball carrying the lineup.
I understand that. I am not disagreeing with you. He's going to benefit. I mean, from Marcell, I am not saying that he should, but if the Marcell addition doesn't help Austin Riley, that's going to be even worse for him. Because now, if he did have an out, that goes away. Once they say Marcell signed for 4 years? So now what I do is going to be magnified, and if I don't do it, it's going to be magnified. I'm rooting for him, but at the same time, it's time to take the training wheels off, Austin. We 2 years removed. He's already been 2 years removed from his rookie year. It's time to show and prove now.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I think you do need to see some progression. I do think, again, if you're asking me, would I rather have him or Johan Camargo playing every day? I'd rather have Austin Riley. I think the upside is there. You know, that's long been my thought, that we saw the best of Johan Camargo a couple years ago when he was career highs and everything. And again, if I'm proven wrong, I'll say, you know what, I was wrong. But I believe we saw peak Johan Camargo a couple years ago. I don't know that we've seen peak Austin Riley yet, and I hope we get to see it at some point here in 2021.
Well, I mean, can I ask you this quickly, Kevin? Was the recent signing of Justin Lamb, who was great a couple of years ago, but obviously he's been hurt for a short stretch here, is that kind of insurance in case Riley doesn't live up to the hype?
I mean, I think that's some of it. I think it's also that the Braves need a bench. I mean, they didn't have a lot of bench pieces on this roster, and I think you've seen them go out and sign 2 or 3 guys in the last 2 or 3 days to really come in and compete for bench spots to try to make this bench better. Lamb's a nice piece to have. I think he could spell Freddie Freeman if he needs a day off as well, play one of the corner positions. So I think, yeah, that's a little insurance to get a veteran guy to go in and look. Anybody that can come in and push you to be better, it's good for the team, right? I mean, I think that's just an old axiom of sports. You need somebody to push your stars. You need somebody to push your role players. So everybody, keep progressing and moving forward in the right direction, not just resting on their laurels. And I think that's what you'll see behind Austin Riley, because he knows, look, if I don't play well, they'll put somebody else in there who'll get it done. So I think there's some pressure, but as far as the team concept is concerned, it's not on him to carry this roster from start to finish. He just needs to go out and perform. And if he does that, as you said, I think that'll be more than enough to help push the Braves forward with where they want to go. We got more to go. Here, go ahead quickly, Ben.
No, I was just gonna say I agree. I mean, the thing about it is this. I mean, when people hear supporting cast, they think, oh, you don't got to do as much. Yes, your responsibility aren't lessened. It's just the fact that BJ. I'm just saying, if he needs to go in with I have to play well mentality, because he got to play well on defense too. He ain't gonna get that luxury Marcell got. He has to be a good third baseman as well as what he does on the plate.
Certainly. Hey, we've got more to come. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you're with us here on this Tuesday. Again, thanks to Jake Roos, Rich Stiles, Roddy Jones joining us here on the show. Also, reminder, we are giving away a free Brave sponsorship for your business potentially. Go to espncoastal.com. You'll find the page for the Braves giveaway. Register your business right there online. We'll have the drawing coming up on March the 24th. So looking forward to that as well as we head into it here on a Tuesday night. Obviously, we'll look for more to come out with Tiger Woods. We should know more. Obviously, this is the way it usually goes, BJ, so you'll laugh right after we get off the show. It seems like that happens to us a lot. But a press conference at 6 Eastern where the police department, they're going to give the very latest on Tiger Woods and his situation there. And we're certainly thinking about him, and that's been on the thoughts of not just sports fans, but a lot of folks here on a Tuesday afternoon.
Well, and yeah, you've seen a lot of announcements and releases and whatnot from around the golf world, around the sports world, but scary stuff with Tiger Woods. And Ben, I agree with what you said, man. One of the, one name icons, one of the just athletes that transcend sports. So hopefully good news with regards to Tiger Woods coming up.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't have said it better, BJ. I mean, Tiger Woods get well soon. I mean, and I like the fact that when things happen to big name stars, we talk to them like they know us. He doesn't know me, you, Kevin, and BJ, but we send our best to Tiger Woods, man. Get well soon. Golf will take care of itself if and when that is a possibility in the future.
We'll come back. We'll have obviously the latest on that tomorrow and more on Wednesday edition. If you missed any portion of the show, ESPNcoastal.com, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify for the podcasted version of the show. And we'll see you soon here, 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network.